Hello, everyone, and welcome to Classic Car Restoration Club live Q&A. I'm joined again with Ross Keel to my right, and also Terry Wright. So, we're looking forward to, hopefully getting a few of your questions right this time, so we'll really mix it up. Just kidding, guys. To start out with, I want to let you know down below. Now, in order to ask a question, it's like this big box. There's the big box on the home screen and on the site. There's a little message box down below. Just type your message in there, and feel free, ask whatever you want. We always encourage anybody to stump Terry here. So, I really appreciate it if you can do that. And below that chat, or that where you get to type in the question, is a little offer for a little free download we put together on different terminology that's used in classic cars. And, so if you ever hear those odd things, you can kind of quick gaze at that and kind of clarify, and, if you see something that we think you really should be on there, feel free to drop us a line. Let us know, hey, you should add this to your terminology worksheet, because we're not afraid to, say we'll add something. And I'm really encouraged tonight because you guys have asked like a ton of questions, and we're anxious to get started. How about you guys?
I think so. Let's do it.
All right. Rich is the first one in, and he put his question in a couple days ago. If the chat rolls up, I encourage you, get the questions in early. Rich writes, hi, I have a 56 Chevy Bel Air and have several fairly small primer spots where I used a little filler on some small dents. Okay, on all the panels except for the doors. What's next is primer surfacer. What I need to know is it necessary to use a primer surfacer on the whole paint or just over the primered areas? Thank you for your help, Rich. Perfect question for our paint and body expert.
I would do the whole thing.
All right, so let me kind of hear that again. So we have a few small.
He's repaired a few small dents with some body filler, and he's only worked on spot. He's not doing like the whole. And then what he's asking is what's next he plans to do is primer surfacer, and he wants to know if it's necessary for him to put surfacer over the entire finish, or if he just wants to. He just needs to do it in the places where he's worked.
Okay, so let's try to peel the layers off of this one. Yeah. I could say a real quick and easy. You only need to put it over your filler repair, but that wouldn't be telling the complete story. I need some more information. Yes. But so
what's on?
So primer surfacer is kind of a high build primer that you would use to finish your body work, right? So you're refining those scratches that are below and you're filling them and sanding it out. So so you had some primer spots with some filler work in it, and you have primer over it again. So primer surfacer, yes, to finish your body work, yes. Do you need it on the whole panel? No, unless.
But
surfaces.
But yeah, so what is the filler over? Is it over metal where you sand it down to metal and fix the dents? And is there existing finish around it? It's a 56 Chevy, it's lacquer. So is that still on there? What type of primer are you using over it for your repairs? Is it an aerosol 1 component or 1K product? Is it a 2 component where there's a catalyst or a hardener? So let's kind of go a couple different scenarios. So let's just say the panel is bare metal and you have some filler on it. Yeah, you need surfacer over your filler to finish that. But do you need it over the rest of the panel? Not necessarily, but you need something over the rest of the panel. So it doesn't have to be a surfacer. It can be it could be a primer sealer. Sealer is typically just a surfacer that's a little less build and usually has a different converter in it and helps to bite into an E-coat type primer. So ideally, in the perfect world, in my perfect world, it's going to be bare metal. It's going to be epoxy, filler over that, and then you can epoxy over that again to seal out the filler, or you can use a polyester type primer to spray the whole panel and block that to get it straight. But yeah, primer surfacer over the filler, you're definitely going to use that. Do you need it over the whole panel? Not necessarily, but you do need something over the whole panel.
And I agree with you 100%. And even my thought would be, how would I approach it? I would maybe come at those spots where you worked, you did your little body work here and there and all over, but I would still, and I may just spot that with primer surfacer to start with until I felt I was close. Yeah. But then I would probably come back and do a surfacer on the whole panel just to sand that once and to make sure that there's nothing I missed. Because you know how that goes. There's always that little tiny dings and nicks.
Totally agree with you. Yeah, without a doubt, I would do that. So my concern is if there's still a lacquer paint on it,
Right.
and you're going to come over with a primer surfacer that's a catalyzed, a newer type primer, is you're going to have what you're going to do is you're going to dump a lot of solvent on there, and that lacquer paint will absorb that solvent. It'll hold it, and it'll come out eventually. It'll come out around the ring of your primer, and you'll end up with what it looks like a ring around your repair of sand scratches, like sand scratches swelled up and sunk. And it'll edge map exactly where you did your work. In that case, panel prime the whole thing to seal it off.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I have done some repairs like this before, but I always top them with like an epoxy sealer at the end.
Yeah.
And when I'm all done, is I spray them with the epoxy primer, and then I let that set. I wet sand that, and then I'm ready for paint. The only reason I do that is because I'm specifically worried about solvent bleed through into multiple feathered layers. Because as soon as you start laying on paint, there's no bigger heart, feeling where all of a sudden it starts lifting edges or stuff starts happening around where
it will
feathered stuff.
It will no doubt do it because there's a feather edge that's like a sponge sucking up solvent.
Wide open.
It'll hide in there and it'll come out later. And after you're all done sanding, it'll be, wow, what's that? Not that you potentially couldn't get rid of it later, but yeah, I would seal off that insoluble finish underneath it. Ideally, it's off there, and then it's insoluble. And by insoluble, I mean if you could take a rag with lacquer thinner and rub on the paint and pull some paint off, that's soluble. That means it can be moved again. You just moved it. If it's insoluble, it's like a catalyzed product. It's not going to go anywhere. So yes and no. You don't have to do the whole panel, but you have to do the whole panel with something.
Yeah, I agree.
Whether it's sealer or an epoxy or whatever. And there's epoxy sealers too.
Yeah, and you touched on it once, and a lot of guys aren't aware of it, like the polyester primers. If you could, just give us just a minute of what a polyester primer is, and not a lot of guys are familiar with.
Yeah. So polyester primer it's exactly what it is. You think of your filler work, and then you have usually a glaze that goes over it. That's usually polyester. It's really thin. It's basically a spray glaze is what it is. And you can get that stuff up to the thickness of a nickel. I mean, in the collision shops, we use it to fix hail dents. It's just scuff the existing finish. Polyester primer, block it. It's thick enough to fix hail dents.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's pretty stable. It'll stay where it is once it's locked up and dried and gassed out. It'll stay there. I really like it. I would like bare metal, epoxy, polyester primer, do all your blocking, straighten. as much as you want, and then I finish with a urethane sealer on top of it before I go to paint.
Yep.
There's some polyester primers that you can go directly to top coat paint. There are some, so you can save a step. You
I've
just
seen
gotta have it finished better.
I've seen some some pretty big name pro shops where everything they do gets polyester. The whole car gets
Easiest
polyester.
way to do it. It's better than trying to mud the whole side with glaze.
Yeah,
and it's even.
gone is the days of skim coating
Yeah.
the whole car because they could just lay down a nice even coat
Mm-hmm.
of polyester and then block the entire car and work out every minor imperfection
Yeah.
in the car before they're done. So it's a good product, and
Very good.
one a lot of guys aren't aware of.
It's a very good product. When you go to spray that, you're going to use a bigger tip in your paint gun. You're going to up to a 2.0 tip.
Mhm.
We typically spray paint with a 1.3 fluid tip. You're going to go up to a 2.0 on polyester. It needs a big tip to spray it. It's thick.
Mhm.
It's thick, and you can put it on pretty heavy. But polyester primer is awesome.
Yep.
And there's some that are direct to metal too.
Oh, cool.
So
Very
there's a lot of advancement there, but it's a great product, and if you can spray it on and put a little guide coat on, do your blocking, and if you get all your guide coat gone and you haven't cut through, you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice. So yeah,
Very cool.
so kind of a couple different answers to them, but
Yeah, I'll give you, yeah, there's more than one way to skin the cat, but yeah, that's good advice. It's kind of go at it and know what your risks are if you do some things as opposed to others. So
yeah. And if you're on here, Rich, if you can reply what you're working on. Is it original finish? Is it bare metal?
Yep.
Is it already epoxy? Something like that makes it easier.
Cool. Bob writes, he's recently purchased a 1987 Avanti, stored for 33 years, and it only has 1,500 miles on it.
Wow.
All the fluids, belts, plugs, etc. have been changed. When the engine heats up and it is turned off, there are a few seconds of pre-ignition dieseling. Any ideas what can cause or what the cure is? Usually when I hear dieseling, it's usually my first thought is usually timing.
It's 87, so I don't know if they had,
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure if they went to electronic ignition and all that, but it's still 87 Avanti. So, I don't.
idle speed.
I'm not sure how much. I'm not real. I'm familiar with the Avantis. I'm not familiar with them that new.
Electronic could be.
But yeah, my first thought would be timing. That's usually the case when it comes to dieseling.
So it's when he shuts it off. So how does the timing affect that then? Because you're shutting off the ignition.
Yeah.
Is it timing of it because it's?
I think any car is capable of dieseling. It's usually that there's a because if it's carbureted, not fuel injected. If it's carbureted, there still is, as long as the engine is turning over, it's sucking air and fuel into it.
But what's igniting?
And what's igniting, what the dieseling itself is basically what it implies is you're actually the heat and combustion or compression of the engine is actually causing combustion. The fact that the engine's hot after it's warm and the fuel goes in and then it proceeds to diesel because it's getting air and fuel still.
And something inside that cylinder is igniting it.
The heat from the engine and the compression.
I'm gonna be asked the stupid questions because I'm not this. This is your. I had to deal with a little bit of that in my past.
Sure.
And
what did you find that fixed it?
Shut it off in gear. It doesn't.
Under load. Well, that'll do it.
So that's a Band-Aid, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Idle speed too is,
idle speed can cause, I know sometimes if you've run an engine hard, you just finish with a cruise, you pull in and you shut it off, and all of a sudden it will boom, boom, and then it'll shut off. it'll diesel a little bit just because the engine's hot. It's still got fuel, unburnt fuel in there. And when you first hit the engine off, there's still cylinders sucking in air and creating that dieseling environment. And as soon as one fires, then that's going to suck in more air and gas and so on and so forth until it runs itself out.
So now I could be very wrong. This might not be an option, but I do remember only 1,500 miles. I'm thinking, what if it's a carbon buildup and that's what ignited? How about cleaning out the carbon? And what I remember is pouring water down the carb to
and I remember guys,
steam clean it.
I'm not sure how effective that is.
I'd be very careful,
and I'm not going to recommend it.
No, I've really done it.
Nor is the club going to recommend it.
No. That's why I said.
Please send your lawsuit inquiries to Terry Wright at.
Send repair bills to. Yeah, no, I'm just saying I remember being a teenager doing that and having that issue. Hey, let's just steam clean the engine a little bit, just keeping the engine running, don't drown it out, right? Just enough to keep it running. But see the stuff come out the exhaust is crazy.
Yeah, it's worth a shot, if somebody else has, and we always like to encourage you guys to, interject too. So if you've got some ideas, feel free to add them down in the chat row below. We're always willing to learn something new too, but for myself, it's usually turned out to be a timing issue
or heat. I mean, if it's running hot, I've seen them deal if they're hot.
For sure.
They're running real hot. So.
And timing can definitely make it run hot.
Kevin writes, "Hi guys, I have a 55 Chevy. This must be 55 Chevy night. Was the other one a 55 or a 57? It was a 56. Oh, good. The Tri-5 guys are here tonight. Yes. I have a 55 Chevy that has 2-year-old gas in the tank. If I pump the old gas out, what should I do with the old gas?" Good question. You can take it to, I know here where we live, there's a hazardous waste recycling center that will take old gas. What you shouldn't do is go dump it out on the ground.
Don't burn it.
Don't burn it. Yeah. Well, how much gas is it? Is it a gallon? Because it'd be a good fire start.
Yeah, if it's just a little gas, you could probably mix it with some fresh gas and then throw it all in your lawnmower.
How is your relationship with your mother-in-law? You top off her tank.
Yeah.
I've used old gas in my old cars. I've mixed it in and just
not
all by itself.
To a point for a couple years.
Lawnmowers.
A couple years sometimes, depending, it depends on the view. I've had my plow truck sit over the winter or over the summer and had it have gas in it that it didn't want to run on. And, but my remedy was to add more gas and
shut it up a little bit.
And it ran fine as soon as I thinned it out some.
I made that mistake on my lawnmower this last summer.
Yeah?
Yeah. I ran out of gas and I took some gas out of my snowmobile that had been sitting there.
Yeah. And? Still ran?
Didn't work?
Didn't run.
No. Started up and
whoa. You messed up your lawnmower.
I drained it all out.
Was it a long way? Was it a 2-cycle?
How long had your snowmobile been sitting there with gas?
1 year.
Oh.
From last winter.
Oh.
I drained some out of there.
Well, that can happen too. I would say, well, you probably filled it with just that fuel. So you weren't like mixing it with anything.
Good.
Yeah,
and it didn't smell good either.
Yeah, but sometimes, they usually smells sometimes give you a good indication of the gas, when gas gets really old, it's like, oh man, you don't even be around it. So
Well, the hazardous waste site would be the place.
Yeah. That would be our recommendation. Yeah. Kevin says, I have a 1965 Chevy C10. Has a 283 V8 2-barrel Rochester carb. It is difficult to start the truck after it has been sitting for a day. The engine is in great condition. The carb's been rebuilt 3 months ago. However, it cranks, but seems to not get enough fuel to start. I have used starting fluid
Wow.
to get it to start. Please advise.
Choke.
It could be a couple things. Could be choke. Choke could affect that. The carb could be draining back to the tank and leaving the carb dry. Easy way to check that quick is before you start it, take your air cleaner off, look down and hit it a couple times, see if you see a squirt of gas.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't see a squirt of gas, then there's no fuel up in the carb. So that could tell you that it's draining back. Usually the fuel pump itself has a check valve in there that prevents that. So sometimes that can be the check valve internally in the fuel pump that causes it to drain back to the tank, because that's up higher and your tank's usually down lower, and that's just a matter of siphoning it back out through the system. Yeah, that's
I'd still say more choke.
Well, if there's no gas in the bowl,
yeah,
Well, right.
it's not choke. But
check for gas. See if you got gas up there.
my quad jets were notorious for the well plugs leaking and draining the gas into the manifold.
Okay.
I don't know about 2-barrel if they have well plugs in the bottom either of those, but
Okay.
that could be.
So it could be.
Well, if it sits for a day, it might evaporate.
Yeah.
And it just take a while to fill the carb up.
Well, that's just it. If it cranks for a while, it's filling up the carb. I would test Mark's test and see if the accelerator pump's squirting gas. First, find out if there's gas there.
And if there's gas in, there's always a potential that the accelerator pump tore or broke, or it's usually just a diaphragm.
Yeah.
Some have like a little piston in them. And usually, like the old piston ones, it was a leather seal, and sometimes if that leather seal didn't soften up, so it doesn't get good squirt on it or something. So maybe that's the issue.
I think it said it was just rebuilt a few months ago, so it's probably got the upgraded pump on it for today's fuels. What about it's a C10?
Carb was rebuilt.
Would a vented? Is a tank vented? Is it maybe creating a vacuum and then it's sucking it back? Maybe is that helping pull gas?
It wouldn't. It would usually unvented tank. Usually that shows up after it's run a little bit, because then you create the vacuum when it's first startup. I still think it's either fuel pump or accelerator pump issue here. But I would guess fuel pump first. That it may be when it's running, it's getting enough gas up there, but when it's sitting, it might be draining back.
Yeah, those old ones have the coil thermostat for the choke and the manifold, right?
It depends on let's see, 65 C10. It's probably running a manifold heat riser tube on it, would be my guess. I don't think I think that's pre-electric, especially for a C10, because usually the trucks were the last to get any improvement.
You used to have those old coils.
And it even could potentially still have a choke cable on it, couldn't it? In a 65.
That'd even be better.
What if
you know it's shut?
Mark, what if there is gas present when you squirt what if there is gas and it's not draining back and it's still hard to start?
And it's just hard to start after it's been sitting.
Is there any scenario that's kind of typical for that? I'm just throwing it out there for you.
So it'd be cold start, hard start. The potential is there for it to be a timing issue, because
too far retarded.
If it's too retarded on cold start, where it would run fine on a hot start, but it wouldn't run on a cold start.
But he did say starter fluid gets it going. So
he does say starter fluid helps
it.
It's dry.
It must be dry.
Yeah, make sure your choke's working right.
Yep.
Make sure
Getting gas.
when you pump it, you're getting a squirt of gas into the main venturi.
Are there any like inline fuel filters that have check balls in them to keep it from draining back?
They do sell actually inline check valves that you
Right.
can
Well, that would
put
keep
in.
it from draining back then, if that might be,
Yeah.
that's a problem.
So you could go that way if he suspected it was an
It's
issue.
dry.
Yeah.
All right. Mario writes, I have a 1969 Chevelle floor pan, has some rust and also some undercoat paint. What is the best method to treat it? I suppose to remove the rust and to remove the old undercoat, I suppose. Oh, you can talk about both.
Best way to treat it?
Wait, he's going to follow up here. Wire wheel brush it all to bare metal, then he's actually asking this. Wire brush it all to bare metal, then pour 15 or something like that. All right.
Oh, okay.
So he's saying, is that what I should do? Yeah, that's what he suggested. Okay, go ahead, Ted.
Inside the car or underneath the car, I guess it really doesn't matter. So if you're going to pour 15,
undercoat it with, undercoat could be either side. Yeah,
it could be either side.
They use it as sound deadener too.
For pour 15, I think that it wants some rust on it, so I wouldn't clean the rust totally off. I think it works. It's supposed to work with rust, so
Yep.
It converts the rust. So if you go that route, I would just knock off the loose, scaly stuff and keep some on there and pour. It does work. I've used it too. I do like it. It does look good. I mean, it works good. And
you'll find no argument.
Your dock. Yeah.
You'll find no argument with me. Actually, I know some of the car restorers. Some guys will go in and they'll paint the insides of their drop offs in their trunk with pour 15, and then they end up because their car was maybe too far gone before they were pour 15ing it. They should have been replacing metal. And I know the restorers that get really pissed when they see that pour 15 in it because it's a bugger to get that stuff off.
It is. It works. It holds on pretty nice. It's hard. Me personally, if it was my car, I'd get it down to clean metal. I'd epoxy it, and then I would use, and this is what I did on my car. So I have ECC. I would clean up the bare metal inside and out. I'd epoxy it. And then I would use, what I did use was 3M's no cleanup body schutz.
Okay.
And it's a rubberized undercoating. There's a special gun that the tube goes down the can, and it applies and it looks really good. It doesn't look like you're trying to hide something. It's not that thick. I mean, you could load it up, but it's good for chip resistance and a little sound deadening. I use it both inside and out. Cool. That was me, and it's a nice color, nice sheen of black. But pour 15 works good too.
Yep. No, but yeah, pour 15 is a good choice. As far as the old undercoat, if there's removing old undercoat from cars can be a real bear. It's not as bad as trying to remove old Dynamat from a car, but it's right up there. But if it's really old undercoat, then a lot of times that stuff usually gets so dried out and brittle you can scrape it off but if it's if it's still kind of gooey, the best thing I've found is to actually start warming it with a torch, not so hot that you're warping the metal, but just warming it and using a putty knife and scraping it away and getting rid of it as much as you can. Then as soon as you get the majority away, you usually can clean up what's left with lacquer thinner or some sort of solvent without having to beat it up too much. But if you have both rust and undercoat, then you kind of decide what you want to do. I know sometimes when that undercoat starts flaking, it can look pretty hideous underneath some cars. So maybe it's best to address that first and then deal with the rest.
And if it is flaking off, how much of it
It's
is
probably-
going to keep flaking off,
Yeah.
and what's coming off next? I mean,
Yeah.
you want to just bite the bullet and take it all off.
All right, moving forward, Rob writes, I have a 69 Coupe de Ville in great original condition. Engine's never been touched. All the brakes new, etc. But it has the same problem as Kevin above. I.e., it does not want to start after standing for more than a day, and it needs starting fluid when then starts easily. I put a new fuel pump in about 15 years ago, but the problem persists. I think the pump has to work hard to get the petrol to the carb, as it probably drains back to the tank when standing. Car is driven, say, once every 2 weeks on average all year. I know, and I'm going to just throw that, and we've kind of discussed this in great detail. But there's one, as I'm reading this, it occurred to me, my father-in-law had a Dodge that old 48 Dodge, used to do the same thing. It sat for a week, and you'd go to start it, and it would, and it would just take forever before it felt like it got enough fuel up there to actually fire. And what we did to solve that one, we put an electric fuel pump in line. Not a big just one for a carburetor. So it's only pushing 7 PSI pressure. And when you first turn on the ignition switch, you'd hear that thing fire up, and then it would just go through the mechanical pump. It's supplying enough pressure to pressurize the system, and a carburetor is set for 7 PSI. So as soon as that as soon as the seat and the carb closed down and you got 7 PSI, the fuel pump shut off, you'd turn the key and it would fire every time. Maybe that's a solution some of you guys might be looking, if it's not fuel pump, if it's not, if you're having persistent drain back problems, it's not a difficult install. It was actually relatively easy install.
That was a 69 Coupe de Ville.
Yep,
Most likely got a quarter jet on it.
probably.
Well plugs.
What?
90% well plugs.
Draining.
It's draining out of the bolt. The fuel's draining out of the bolt.
Oh,
It's common on those. I didn't have to fix mine. I don't know why.
It probably is
Mine were
quite
different,
good.
but you can find all kinds of little videos on how to JB weld the well plugs. It's not the best because that will fail too eventually. But they're just little lead plugs that are in the bottom of the weld. There's the drill areas for the fuel line passages or fuel passages, and they're just plugged in the bottom. And once they leak, they just leak right below the throttle plates into the manifold. You don't even see it. Check the accelerator pump, see if you got fuel. If you don't have fuel, your quadrajet, it's most likely a quadrajet on that car.
yep, on that car it probably would be.
Well plugs. Yeah, Google it. You'll learn a lot about those. Don't give it a carburetor. It's a great carburetor. You just got to
That's a lot of
tend to
fuel, though. I mean, I'm surprised
it'll
you
do
don't
it.
have hard lock.
It will do it.
All right. Conrad writes, first of all, thank you for all the information you guys give us. It's invaluable. Well, glad you appreciate it, Conrad. Denny's writes, I need help on a 68 Mustang in which I have a 302 engine. We just rebuilt the engine with the new pistons, cam, valves, etc. After it was balanced with the original harmonic balancer, flex plate, etc., the car shakes to pieces when any gas is given to it. It's not in the drivetrain since it happens sitting still. We figured it was the transmission, but it has been at the transmission shop more than 2 months now, and they're having a hard time figuring it out. They say it's not the transmission or the torque converter, and they even put a new flex plate to match up to the new AOD transmission I installed. Engine's a 302 from a 71 Ford Torino.
Does it do it with the?
Any input suggestion would be really appreciated. Thanks so much, Conrad. P.S. It has been timed out and it has been timed and tuned, compression tested, etc. I also put in a Holly, different carb. Holly sniper injection kit. All right.
Would they try without the torque converter hooked up?
Yeah, I'm both.
Oh, it's the engine with the unbolting the whole torque converter. If the engine would run without, you could run without the even tranny connection.
Unbolt it, push it back into the tranny, and run. See if you're removing the tranny totally.
That'll avoid your.
That'll tell you if the vibrations in the engine, and not the transmission.
If it goes away by doing that, it's definitely in the tranny.
What the suggestion there is, Conrad, is there's basically 3 bolts or 4 bolts, or if it's a DeSoto, then there's 6 bolts that hold the torque converter to the flex plate, or in this case, it just attaches to the crankshaft. Yeah. But anyway, that by disconnecting the connection between the two, the torque converter should push back and disengage from the flex plate. And then you could technically start and run the vehicle for a short time and see if you still had the vibration. That would tell you if it's in the transmission or if it's in the motor. If it's at a tranny shop and they're saying it's not the tranny or the torque converter, because when I was reading this, I was thinking torque converter. I was thinking if it's just really that much vibration.
You think they would have tried that though?
Yeah, you would think they'd unbolt the torque converter first.
Yeah.
Just see, hey, eliminate that whole problem.
Well, it'd be easy, yeah.
Yeah, because you would know right away if the transmission is disconnected and it's still vibrating. If it's not vibrating, that tells you the problem is in the transmission or torque converter. And they installed a new flex plate. That took out one of my ideas. My other thought was, a slipped, and I'm not sure on the 302 if the harmonic is balanced
balanced.
And
it's externally balanced.
Because I've even on this car, when the harmonic failed, the outer weight ring started to slide different than the rest of and I didn't notice that right away.
It could get off sideways also.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was that bad.
But so it's something to at least inspect, see if there's
timing mark should tell you that, shouldn't it?
Yeah, timing mark should tell you.
Yeah.
He did say it had been timed and tuned and compression tested, and it has a Holly sniper. Wow. Yeah, something's causing it. Unless something, if he disconnects the tranny and it still vibrates, and then it'd be in the engine, and then I would, if it's getting that much vibration that it's shaking to pieces, it almost cries to be disassembled.
Something's coming loose.
So yeah, something's not right internally either, and certainly. And
I don't know if he driven it. Did it say? Because this sounds like when he gives it gas, it shakes like crazy, huh?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like he's driven it. If it's shaking to pieces, probably not driving it.
Right.
I'd probably disconnect all the belts and have any accessory drives disconnected too.
Yeah, you could disconnect all your accessories and just have, you can run your engine for a minute or two without your water pump running. You can, it's not gonna hurt anything. That would seem like the natural next progression is, after you isolate it from the engine to the transmission, if it is the engine, start isolating, remove all the other components that could be causing vibration.
Yeah.
And,
I'd start
and
with
if
the tranny
if
first.
your engine, you remove all the components and you remove the transmission from the equation and your engine's still vibrating that much, I would say you're gonna have to open up the engine to find out what's going on.
Not the answer he wants.
Sorry, Conrad. We've all been there, welcome to being a car guy, it's like, sometimes you just go, oh, geez. Sometimes you look for the easy fixes. Then the next thing you know, you got a whole nother engine sitting at the engine builder because
Who does?
Well, it could happen. I'm just saying, theoretically. Bill writes, on my 92 Ford Explorer Sport, when I removed the front hubs and rotors, I damaged the locking keys. They have been hard to find. I guess I only need them in four-wheel drive, which I use very seldom, but otherwise, are they really necessary? If so, any idea where I can find them? And I removed the front hubs and rotors on a 92 Ford Explorer. You probably have more experience on 92 Ford Explorers than I do, Ross.
Is he talking about the nut locks? Is that what he's
talking about the locking
the
keys.
Axle nuts. You got the locking
keys. I'm not.
The little metal locking keys on them. For the nut.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what he's talking about.
Yeah. They have been hard to find. I damaged the locking keys.
I only need them in four-wheel drive, which is weird. I don't.
On a 92 Explorer, those didn't have lockouts on them. Did they?
I don't think so. I don't know. I've never owned one.
Yeah, I'm not familiar. A lot of the early four-wheel drives, they had lockouts on the hubs that you had to turn in order to get it.
I would think 92 they wouldn't have them.
I wouldn't think a 92 would have them. That's sort of post lockout thing.
Locking keys. I'm not really sure.
I'm not either.
You have to look that one up.
All right, guys. You heard the question. If you're familiar with the locking keys on a Ford Explorer, 92-ish, feel free to pipe in. We are always looking for answers.
Got to be able to get a hub in a salvage yard if you needed to replace it.
Yeah, and my thought is the 92 Fords aren't that hard to find parts for, or even,
It might have auto locks on it, that maybe he's talking about the keys that lock into the hub.
Yeah.
To make it go into four-wheel
when it goes into four-wheel drive, so like a centrifugal engagement kind of thing.
So maybe they got damaged, and that's what he's talking about. But maybe they're known to be damaged.
I don't know. It may be the case where you got to get them out of a salvage yard.
Right.
I'm not 100% sure. I haven't, I'm always surprised when I find out certain parts aren't available for some cars, and this may be one of them. I don't know. Okay, guys. Rick writes, I have a 1970 El Camino with a 283 or 383 stroker in it, and I have the same problem with pre-ignition when hot. Yeah, that always happens, one guy has an issue, and then everybody that has that issue brings the carb is a Holly 650 with electric choke on it. Edelbrock Performer intake, timing is set to 11 degrees before top dead center. ACR 44T, so it's a AC resistor 44T spark plug, plus the Pertronics electronic distributor. Zero carbon buildup in the combustion chamber. Any suggestions? Okay, so he's got his car timed. 11 degrees might be right. Without looking up 3D3 stroker, it might be a little retarded, but it should be close. Usually 12 degrees is a good starting point on small blocks.
Is it the same thing as
Combustion,
the last one?
any suggestions?
Sounds like it.
Is it
It's
the
running
dieseling
on.
part or is it just
Sounds like
pinging?
it's running on.
It's running.
Yeah, same problem with pre-ignition when hot. So it dieseling when hot.
Okay.
Is that when he shuts off?
Carb is,
He's giving
yeah,
it gas.
yeah. It-
Sounds like the same problem as the guy above.
650 and a 383, it's not over carbureted.
No.
Is it getting too hot? Is it?
Yeah, too hot or idle. Where's his idle at? If he's running a stroker, he's probably running a higher idle at the cam.
Yeah, it doesn't say where his idle is set at. Yeah, too high of an idle speed can sometimes, run into that pre-ignition problem when you shut them off.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it's you got decent components, and it sounds like the setup, like I said, 650 is not overcarbed for a 383.
Oh.
So, yeah, it might, I don't know. You might want to try advancing your timing a little more. See if that, sometimes, and it's worth a shot. See if it solves the problem or not. And also look at your idle speed and maybe bring that down to where it's doesn't
if you're
cause
running
any
a
issue.
cam and you're running towards 1,000 RPMs, it might be too high.
Yeah. Bruce writes motor mounts. Gonna need a little more information, Bruce. Appreciate the question. Bruce, what do you want to know? Maybe he's replying to the vibration kind of thing.
Oh,
Maybe.
There you go.
Yeah. Maybe that could be it.
yeah,
But
usually when
you would think
give
somebody
gas,
would
it's
spot that
smoother.
by now if it's like shaking that much. But
Yeah, and I mean, I would think that, once you give it gas, it should be smoother.
I can see him torquing and then stopping, but I
Yeah.
can't see him going back and forth unless you're jacking around the throttle. But
yeah,
it should. I can see him.
it's worth it.
Rotate.
It's worth inspecting.
Oh, without doubt.
Let's see. James writes, "Hello. Reference to Conrad. Oh, let's see. Wait, I got to remind myself what Conrad was. Conrad was, no. Conrad was the '68 Mustang that. That's
The shaking one.
the shaky one. Shaky Mustang. The hello reference to Conrad. I would first check the firing order, then triple check. I would first triple check the firing order, maybe. And triple check the flex plate before tearing into the internals of the engine. I have had 2 bad flex plates over the past 50 years, brand new and balanced incorrectly. And that may be the case, I think it becomes natural for everybody to assume that when they put a new part on, it's good.
Mhm.
And we've all put on parts at one time or another that, just gave us more trouble. And then it, sends you in the wrong direction for a while. And then you're like thinking, what could that be?
But even if it was a flex plate, if you disconnect the tranny and still does it, it could be still, it would show up as a flex plate too.
And improperly balanced flex plate.
Yeah.
You could disconnect
Should do it either way.
the transmission, but at least you would know it had nothing to do with the torque converter or the transmission at that point. Thanks, James, for your input. Appreciate it. You know, like I say, we're always looking for other people's ideas as well. Rich writes, the power steering on my 57 works fine when I turn right. Not so easy when I turn left. Fluid is full. Thanks for any help. 57 Chevy, and I'm going to have to assume it's stock. The it works fine when you turn right and not when you turn left.
Those things have check bells in them also.
Yeah.
In the gearbox.
Well, I have had cars where it made noise going one way and not going the other way. Usually it turns fine both ways. I would guess that has something to do with the valving in the gearbox and how it directs the fluid when it's going. It could very well be, internal in the gearbox. It might be the kind of thing where if you just flush the whole system out, that you can get, it could be debris or dirt or something stuck in it. The power steering pump itself just supplies pressure. It just, it's one line that provides pressure. So I don't suspect the power steering pump. I would suggest it could very well be in the gearbox. Would be my idea.
I trust you.
I've seen them where, it's the gearbox when, they turn easier one way or the other. Rack and pinions have had where they do this, all of a sudden it'll just turn really easy, and then, it's totally different, but those things are similar in that way because they have those, when the pressure goes one way, if you're turning that, some check valve moves back and forth. And,
Yep.
And it might be sticking or something, and you're getting them both ways.
My bad. I'm not remembering. I'm pretty sure 57 Chevy is, that's all just gearbox. It's not like a power slave cylinder or something. It's just a gearbox power steering. I would think, it may very well just be dirt or something in the system, and it could be flushed and cleaned out. It's worth a shot. Of course, one of the real benefits of the 57 Chevy is that you can buy parts for them all over the place. You don't have to work real hard to find 57 Chevy parts, and even the 57 Chevy power steering gear. But I would try. You may have already tried it, but try flushing the system some more and back flushing it, and trying to maybe make sure there's no debris inside there that's preventing the fluid in one direction. Other than that, it may be time to have your power steering gear rebuilt. And sorry to say that, but that'd be my suggestion.
I don't think the tensioner on those would affect that, your backlash on your adjuster.
Yeah, I don't.
Sometimes if it's too tight, it'll be tight both ways.
Yeah.
If you got it too tight, but I don't think it would affect one way worse than other. So.
All right. Wendell writes, if I install a Pertronics unit in my 1954 Chevy 235 inline 6-cylinder engine, will I need to retime the engine? Of course, yeah, because there's no way for you to get the Pertronics. There's no way. Well, you could do it without removing the distributor, but for me, I'd remove it and do it out on the bench. But I suppose you could technically, especially on a 6-cylinder inline 6, because you got lots of room around it. you could install it in the engine. You would still need to retime the engine because you're not exactly sure where the magnetic pickup and the reluctor wheel. You're not exactly sure that's going to line up 100% to the original factory one. It could be close. It could be off a few degrees. But it would just be natural to, after you finished installing the Pertronic kit, is to re-time your engine and make sure it's firing right. And just the fact that it's a different mechanism instead of something running on a cam. It's a magnet passing by a pickup. It may even though it might be perfectly aligned, just the properties, the mechanics of it might happen at a slightly different interval than the factory one.
Time it.
Get the timing light out. It only takes a minute.
That's the Explorer.
Okay, Bill writes, just to follow up to my 92 Explorer. Yes, thanks, Bill. These keys are tiny slugs of metal that fit into each hub. Recommended removal is via magnet, but mine were frozen and hard to be drilled out. Son of a gun. That's tough.
Wow. Yeah, that's
You've never torn into one of those?
Torn one apart. Never owned one. So
you never owned it? You what?
A Ford?
Yeah. You had Fords. You've seen a few Fords.
I have a old Ford pickup.
You had one you were doing all kinds of front axle stuff on that too long ago.
That was all international though.
No, you had the little one. You had that little Explorer you had for a while.
Me?
Yeah.
No.
You flipped it. It was leaking.
Oh, that was an S. Ford, what do they call it? Escape. Yeah, that's totally different.
Yeah, all right.
That was like a 2005. So
You guys done swapping recipes over here?
Yeah, we're arguing about whether or not he owned a Ford until you remind him of a Ford he owned.
that was one I forgot about. I didn't do any work on that.
He forgot about that one.
That was a quick flip.
All right.
Yeah.
I still find it hard to believe that you can't get those parts. If push comes to shove, call the salvage yard. Carpart.com will tell car-part.com will tell you who's got one in your area. It's a website for salvage yards. And you'll be able to, do a search for front axles, and they'll be able to tell you if they have one. And then, of course, it's up to the yard if they're gonna, they may want you to buy the whole front axle.
So that's what I'm saying, because that must be for the electronic lockout, to unlock the front end. So it must be a magnet or something pulls those back and forth or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Recommended removal via magnet. Wow. See, Bill, we're all learning something. I have not worked on enough 92 Explorers. And Ross apparently has, he mentally blocks out every Ford that he's ever owned.
I had a good Ford old truck. My 58 was a good Ford.
There you go. See? I've owned plenty of Fords. So, they're good. And then Pat Hazel's in our audience, and
He's a Ford guy.
he bleeds Ford blue.
You know anything about that?
It was probably my boss had one. He always had trouble with it. It's like you say, it's a magnet that pulls back and forth electric. You hit the button.
Pat claims that they are electric and that there is a magnet or something, some mechanism there that drives those things in and out. And apparently that's what happened to Bill's, is they just got stuck. I'm sorry to hear about your problem, Bill, but I'm
I
not
just wonder if
sure.
he's checked
Not
with
sure.
Ford, the dealers,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
if it's a common issue. you know.
If it's an issue, yeah, it's always a good place to start with a dealer and say, hey, is this available? And if they say no, then you're off to the salvage yard. Because even the
They
salvage
probably know
yard
what
will
it is.
have ones with bent axles and stuff like that that they won't mind
Pulling them out. Or
pulling them
try to
out
get
of,
them out.
or letting you go out in the yard. And some places will let you go out in the yard and
Yeah.
you pull them.
You pull it lots, so.
Yeah. All right, we are
Oh, my.
officially at the top of the hour, guys. Wow, this has gone really quick again. Remember right below here, right below the chat box, there is a place to download our classic car terminology, download kind of a little quick tip sheet on different car names and phrases and what things are called. So, a lot of jargon in the car industry. So gives you an opportunity to kind of brush up on some of that. And and always if you see some terminology that you think should be added, let us know. We're always updating it. And with that, we've managed to get to the top of the hour. We did good, guys.
We didn't get them all.
We got to all of them. We did. We got to the bottom of the list. Did we miss anybody? Yeah,
Yeah, we did.
we did.
Good, perfect.
Perfect. We did good. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you coming out.
Thank you.
And until next month, get out in the garage. It's middle of winter.
Yeah.
Time to get some work done on these cars.
Have a happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, guys.